Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Chris Hunsicker with Norfolk Southern. Thanks for having me here. We got some questions. We had some stuff come up from the community asking for an update. You know, we've been back here every few weeks to let you know what's going on, just kind of tell you what's going on and answer really any kind of questions you have. I don't have a whole lot more to share since last time, but I'll kind of give you an update of where we are. Kind of the phases of what we're looking at the site is the investigation and the remediation down there, the site restoration, and the work in the streams. So I'll start the easy one, the stream work. Really, we're kind of at a pause still. We're in our quarterly assessment phase right now. We've done some sediment sampling and some water sampling. We haven't been able to do an evaluation of what we call a qualitative assessment of the stream that's looking at the water, seeing if we're seeing sheens, because it's just been so dry. We haven't had a whole lot of rain the past few months. I mean, everywhere's in a drought. Water levels are down. They're really not representative of normal conditions, so we're kind of pausing that until hopefully November acts like November. We get some rain back, the streams come up, and then we'll go ahead and resume that process. And we also have another quarterly event, which will start beginning of the year too, where we keep looking at the streams. So that's where we are with the streams. And I just kind of roll. So you guys have heard me enough times. If you have a question, please just ask. Fire away, and I'll go ahead and answer them, or when we're done. Restorations move along pretty well. Certainly you see stuff on Taggart, on the south side of Taggart, the eastern end of the property where we had the big tank farms. We had 3 tank farms there, 3, 5, and 6 going from west to east. 5 and 6 are all done, restored. We've got grass growing, they're going pretty well. Tank farm 3, which is the driveway to the Bogner's property there, that's almost all dug out. We dug out most of it. There's one little area we saw a detection. We're gonna go back and do a scrape there. Once that's done, in the back of that area, there's a big pile of soil, which gets grass growing on it now. That's all topsoil designated to go in there. So once we get those clearances from the EPA, everything's blessed, we'll restore that, cover that with grass, restore that back to where it was. There was a gravel area in the front where the Bogners had the parking area. We'll restore all that. Everything south at Taggart will be done. The other work restoration-wise, you know, the ditches are flowing the way they were before. I mean, there's still a little work on the east end that we're finishing out, collecting or connecting new pipes and culverts so that can flow where it was, but everything pleasant. It's flowing like it did before, going right down the Sulphur Run, so that's all working real well. The north side of the tracks, that's restored, so that's flowing back the way it was, so we're real happy with that. Between Pleasant and Ceram Fab, there was a field in there. We just finished up some drainage features, some storm drains, things like that last week. So that's going to get topsoil restored. So that's in a good shape there. North side of the tracks is in pretty good shape coming together. We're still doing a bunch of work with the sheet piling down there. You know, we had sheet pile along the tracks when we were doing the removal action. We're taking care of that. So you'll hear that. That's still ongoing. We're trying to be very considerate and limit that during the day so we're not messing up people. Yeah.
How is it under the rails? I hear rumors of pulling the rails up again and closing Taggart.
So we are not seeing anything, you know, and that's why I came here tonight to talk about that. We're not seeing any reasons to close Taggart, or we're not seeing any indications that there are impacts under the tracks. We're still looking at things and still doing investigation, but we're not seeing anything now that says we got to pull up tracks.
Right, because I've heard it from pretty good.
Well, I'll tell you, don't believe it, because, you know, I'm the guy who's dealing with this stuff. And that's why I'm here. So right now we're not seeing anything. Even if we had to do something, Taggart is open, and we're really not seeing a need to close Taggart Street. You know, we went through a year ago this time when we were running 100 trucks a day down there. You know, it was pretty busy. We're way past that, you know, and I think we've got a lot of practice. So if we need to run trucks and move things around there, well, I don't want Taggart to get any more restricted than it is now. I'd really like it to be far more open. I know you guys feel the same way too. That's really our goal, was to get Taggart open and back to you guys. So
Are you seeing contamination when you're pulling the piling?
No. So when we're pulling the piling, wherever we're pulling the piling, we're doing that in areas where we've cleared on both sides, or we've got clearance on both sides. We're pulling that piling out. It's actually coming out pretty well. It's almost kind of squeegeeing up out of the ground. We're decontaminating that. We're collecting that soil and handling it. We're going to reuse that piling. You know, we're using that for other projects.
Everything around the CSI site and everything's all good?
The CSI site, we're still working on the CSI site, so that's not done yet. So in our weekly updates where we talk about, you know, on our NS Making It Right page, We've got a couple areas in there inside that bathtub around the CSI site that we have to go back and get. We're working on those. They're all inside that containment. So once we dig that out and get that done, then we'll yank that piling out and that liners will come
So
out.
that's why all the trucks are coming down Tiger Street again? Because of what's under the,
No,
well, there's been a ton of trucks coming up and down Tiger Street the last week or so.
the last week or so, we haven't been doing much excavation here.
Was that hauling the roll-offs, or was that?
Well, there were all kinds of roll-offs.
Okay.
Now, if all this is supposedly close to being done, why are we taking so many more roll-offs out of there when you say those three places where all the roll-offs were,
Yeah.
you've got two of them, you've got them all evacuated now. Why are we still taking so many roll-offs out of here?
Because we still got to get the remaining soil out. Okay.
Well, then why are we telling everybody everything is perfect here?
No one has said that.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that now. We've got more work to do. We've got more work to do on the east end. We're not saying it's perfect, but we're getting towards the end of the process here. There is going to be more trucks and more soils and more excavation on that east end of the site here over the next few months. That is going to happen, all right? But it's not going to be the levels that we had last year when we were digging things out really a year ago in October and November. We still have work to do. There's still soil going to be coming out of the ground.
Do you want to talk about the actual contaminant that we're seeing?
Oh, I haven't even got to phase 3 yet, but did I answer your guys' questions? Okay. So I was wrapping up with the restoration. We're pulling out sheet pile where it makes sense. There's portions along the tracks where we're actually driving it into the ground. It's going to stay there along our property, along the tracks. That's for stability, and that's also for future maintenance. So trains and the maintenance crews can go back and forth. So that's going to be happening there. All the sheet pile that's right up against the tracks, they're going to pound that down and leave it in place. So that's the restoration stuff. The final part, the investigation and remediation on the east end of the site. That's where we're seeing still some contamination. We talked about the areas inside by CSI, inside that area. We saw some trimethylbenzene, we saw an area of vinyl chloride. We're going to dig those out, small areas within that containment area. So we've got those well defined. When we come back next week, we're going to hit those and get those out of here. There will be boxes of materials coming out and going down Taggart and going off site. On the east end, we're seeing some material between the two sets of tracks. We're seeing some benzene in there, which we saw last year early on, March, February of 23. We're going back to get those areas. There's some areas to the north of the tracks, right along the north side of the tracks, that we're going to go ahead and address those. There's some area in the wetlands to the north of the tracks. We're seeing some 2-butoxyethanol in there. That we're still working on that definition, and then once we know where that is, we're going to be able to address that. And also south of the tracks, so there's an area south of where we dug out before. We're seeing that same constituent. We've got that pretty well defined. Actually, we just got some information in today, which really kind of defines where that is. South of the tracks, to the west and to the south and the east, we've got a box. We're calling it a con cluster area that we've just got defined, so we can figure out how we're going to take care and address that. So that's the material. That's going to be coming, here the next few months while we work to address those materials down the east end.
Have these areas not been addressed, or they have been addressed and now there's residual?
They have not been addressed. So these are areas that we did some investigation around them before. We've got a lot of borings in there. We've got a lot of monitoring wells in there. Fortunately, we're not seeing the contaminants in the water, so it's not going anywhere. But we're still seeing it at a soil level above a screening level that we need to address it. So these are areas that were not previously dug out.
So there was a sign that it was there, and then they just weren't like priority areas?
Well, we've just been working around the whole site, so yeah.
It's all derailment related?
That's what we're seeing, yes. This is all, we're managing it derailment related materials. And to your point was, they weren't going anywhere. So one of the big tools that we use is in water and it's out water migrating. We're seeing water migrating because it's flowing. We know where groundwater is flowing. We're not seeing this chemical in the water above a standard that's causing us concern. But we still want to take care of the issue that's there so it doesn't cause a concern later on. Yes, sir.
The pumps, and I noticed there's a bunch of big pumps out at State Line Lake. Does that have to do with
Yes.
cleanup that's going on?
Yes, and it will or it may, depending on. So with how we manage these materials up there, especially in the wetland area, it's really hard to do construction in a wet swamp. So that water on the east of the site is all clean, not been affected by the derailment. What we want to do, and we've done this before, is we'll bypass that water. We'll pump down the water around the wetlands so it doesn't flow through the wetlands. Then it can dry out a bit, then we can manage that better. So that's what those pumps are there for. We had some pumps on the south side of the tracks that we were looking at that before, about dewatering that area. We've kind of changed that strategy, how we're looking to deal with that, so we're really not looking at that right now. But those pumps on the north side probably will come into play if we're going to be doing while we do the work in the wetlands to the north.
Okay, but no contamination?
No, that's all pumping clean water around the site. We had done that before when we were doing all the excavation in the middle. We were pumping clean water around the site. That allowed clean water to go from State Line, still run sulfur, so sulfur would be less impacted by, because we were containing all the water before when we were doing the work in the middle.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a similar bypass as that.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? Eric, did I leave anything out?
I don't think so. Is the east end stuff relatively clear? There's the three areas that we're looking at, the wetlands, which was east of Brave, the track areas, and then this area that's immediately south of the tracks, kind of between the tracks and the State Line Tavern.
What's your time frame on completing all this?
First quarter is what we're hoping. Right, end of first quarter is really what we're aiming for. And we're working with the agency. I'm sorry?
What would deter that?
Environmental construction. So the things that happen in construction. If we would get really bad weather, that might slow things down. We've been doing a lot of investigation, so we think we've got a pretty good handle on where things are. We feel pretty confident about that. But if we would get somewhere and realize, hey, there's a finger or something going a way that we didn't anticipate, that might be a challenge. Really, we feel pretty good about, that timeline. It may go longer if, we run into challenges in construction, operation, things like that.
The investigation work is still kind of underway. It's hoping to be completed here in the next few weeks. And hopefully we'll have a really good picture of basically what's left to be done and remediated.
What is the process for the investigation?
That's, wish we had a map here, but it's that process that we've been doing for the last, year and a half, that delineation process where you're going essentially every 25 feet and drilling a hole and pulling out a sample of soil at different depths all the way down and sending those to a laboratory and seeing what chemicals are involved there. So, and not just the soil, but also the groundwater and sediment for the wetlands. And the other thing that might just impact the timeline is going to be weather and how how much snow and things look in the late winter and early spring.
I have a question. On the other end of town, going out of town, big huge pile of railroad ties. Are those contaminated railroad ties
No.
sitting there? Are those going to be moved?
They will be
They're just
moved.
gonna sit there?
That's normal railroad operation. So when we do our normal maintenance for the tracks, the ties have a certain lifetime, 20, 30 years usually. Those ties that's just normal maintenance, so they've got stacked there. Those ties will get moved. We handle those ties. Actually, we've got a program where we do that. This is what we do system-wide. Those ties usually go down to a couple facilities down south. They'll go to a paper mill, and they'll use them as fuel, so it's a beneficial reuse, so they're not a waste. They're not going in a landfill. They'll haul them down there. Actually, if there's some good ones, they might end up at Home Depot or Lowe's, but they go to a paper mill for fuel down south. But no, they will not be there. They're not. They have nothing to do with this. Just normal maintenance. So if you go on our system, especially in the summer, summer is the big time to do the maintenance. They'll take out tons of ties, replace them all. They pop them out, throw a new one in, and then those all get hauled off. So they will go.
Thank you.
Yeah, because my normal job, I deal with those a lot all the time, all over the network. But yeah, they will. Nothing to do with here, but we still take care of them. Anybody else? So, no, thank you very much. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. I know there's uncertainty with what we're doing. I know it's been taking a long time to get done. I appreciate just being able to answer questions and try to, address, potential rumors so they're not an issue. You guys have all my information. If you have questions, please reach out. We're at the church, so we're still here to answer questions. So, thank you very much.